Hello, everyone. My name is Luis. I'm a senior at Florida Atlantic University, and Professor Jakee is my co-author and professor of economics. So today I'm presenting our case study in entrepreneurial failure and its implications, focusing on the Beatles, specifically their company Apple Records as a case study. So there are few but impactful reasons why entrepreneurial failure is important. So first, existing theories focus disproportionately on successful entrepreneurial endeavors, ignoring the vast spectrum of failures and intermediate outcomes. So these neglected areas hold insights into the challenges and iterative nature of entrepreneurship. Second, entrepreneurial acts inherently involve creativity and operate under conditions of radical uncertainty, making their outcomes unpredictable. Focusing only on successes limits understanding of the full entrepreneurial process, including its societal impacts and the variety of responses these acts provoke. Third, we advocate for a non-teleological approach, which separates the entrepreneurial act from the subsequent, often unpredictable outcomes. This shift allows for the study of entrepreneurship as a dynamic and multifaceted phenomenon, rather than conflating it with its end results. And finally, by examining failures alongside successes, researchers can uncover deeper insights into how norms and institutions evolve in response to entrepreneurial activity, including the unintended consequences or societal disruptions it may cause. The topic of entrepreneurship has been growing significantly since the 1980s, and its increased attention has surfaced uncertainties and biases, which need to be addressed for a proper understanding of entrepreneurial theory. For the purpose of this research, an entrepreneur is defined as an individual who deals with the uncertainty that comes from disrupting established institutions, whose actions and behavior are driven by creativity. This definition excludes managers and self-employed individuals. So today, most influential ideas of entrepreneurship come from economists Israel Kirzner and Joseph Schumpeter, but we still lack an accepted theory of entrepreneurial behavior. Kirzner is an important economist who reintroduced the role of the entrepreneur into economic theory. He introduced the entrepreneur as a central mechanism in the market's movement towards equilibrium, with his idea of entrepreneur alertness. He argues that market errors are predefined and waiting to be discovered and addressed by an entrepreneur. Schumpeter took a different approach and described the entrepreneurial process as creative destruction. His view is that when the economy is in a state of equilibrium, an entrepreneur rearranges resources or techniques to increase profit. This action destroys the current equilibrium and creates a new one, where goods are improved and/or costs are reduced. But despite the differences in their ideas, there are a couple common themes between Kirzner's entrepreneurial alertness and Schumpeter's creative destruction. Kirzner's and Schumpeter's views ultimately disregard the entrepreneurial process that takes place in real time, before a final result is achieved. Their views utilize an ex post perspective that eliminates the concepts of time. And by disregarding real time, the entrepreneur's inability to predict the results of their actions is also pushed aside, making it appear as if the entrepreneur knew exactly how their actions would impact the market at the end. And there's also a normative bias present in both theories, which is that entrepreneurship ends in a socially beneficial outcome in the economy. This deterministic approach of focusing on the end results disregards the entrepreneurial process and all unintended consequences that come from it, and thus lead to an incomplete view of entrepreneurial behavior. Studying entrepreneurial failure will help cover those gaps and lead to a more complete view of entrepreneurship theory. So why did we choose to study the entrepreneurial behavior of the Beatles? The Beatles provide one of the most compelling examples of entrepreneurial behavior. Their creative approach to music and social values not only captivated audiences worldwide, but also reflected the band's defiance towards the established institutions of post-war England in the 1960s. While the Beatles were highly successful in shaping the music industry, their efforts to expand into the record label industry with the creation of Apple Records was not. The highly influential band that put the world in a state of Beatlemania was unable to keep their venture open. making it an exceptional case study for entrepreneurial failure. The Beatles were frustrated with existing big record labels that were owned and operated by non-artists that focused on profits over creativity. These companies made it nearly impossible for new artists with unique styles to be represented. To change that, the Beatles created Apple Records. They wanted to revolutionize the music production industry by creating a record label made by musicians for musicians, where everyone works together to create an environment filled with creativity and where artists have more power. While it was certainly an interesting venture idea, Apple Records failed within a few years of its creation. If I had more time, I would go deeper into the reasons for their failure, but to summarize, they severely mismanaged their funds by not controlling how much they spent per artist and even overspending on artists that lacked talent. And the second main reason was their internal conflicts. Apple Records happened near the breakup of the band, and this impacted their communication and ability to act on their venture. But despite Apple Records' failures and closure, the decisions taken by the Beatles affected the market in unintended ways. Artists like James Taylor, Billy Preston, Mary Hopkin, and the Badfinger Band all started their careers at Apple Records, but eventually moved to other record labels where they became successful. Apple Records and their association with the Beatles launched these artists' careers by producing their first albums. And also, shortly after Apple Records closed, Paul McCartney leveraged his experience with the creation and failure of Apple Records and created his own production company called MPL, which did become successful and is still active to this day and manages the rights to the Beatles songs, among others. So clearly, despite Apple Records' failure, the entrepreneurial process caused ripples in the market, unintended consequences that are detached from the final outcome of the venture. To truly capture the entrepreneurial process, we must advocate for the inclusion of failures in theoretical models. These failures are not anomalies. In fact, there are significantly more failed ventures than successful ones, and they reveal the nuances of decision-making and the effects of market pressures. For instance, Apple Records wasn't just a financial misstep. It exposed flaws in management, resource allocation, and risk perception that many theoretical models would fail to address. Additionally, entrepreneurship must be understood as a real-time process driven by uncertainties. Success and failure are rarely premeditated outcomes. They emerge from navigating unpredictable environments. With Apple Records, shifting market dynamics and the Beatles' inexperience in managing a business created a perfect storm. These elements, often overlooked, highlight why entrepreneurship can never be reduced to static theories. Real-time adaptability is just as important as creative vision. And this brings us to two essential takeaways from this case study. First is that entrepreneurial failures do cause unintended ripples in the market. Apple Records, while struggling internally, tried to challenge traditional industry practices and ended up launching the careers of a few artists who weren't given a chance by other labels. And consequently, they left Apple Records during its closure and secured contracts with more established labels. And Paul McCartney might not have started MPL if it wasn't for his involvement with Apple Records. These ripple effects demonstrates that failures can shape industries just as much as successes. And second, future research must address the integral role of failure. By acknowledging failure as a core component of entrepreneurship, we can refine existing theories and create tools that better prepare entrepreneurs for the realities of their journey. Without this shift, we risk leaving entrepreneurs with an incomplete roadmap. Thank you.
Well,